Hey, group. It's Pitt, and I'm back with some more discernment. Today, we're going to be diving back into the book of Jasher. We're actually going to be beginning the study of, we did the introduction yesterday. If you missed that, it is definitely worth checking out. I'm doing this in a live format so that if there are any questions, we can address them at the end. I'm not going to try and make it 2 hours every day unless we got questions. I'm going to try to keep it just over an hour. So we'll see how much content we get through as we do. We will be reading aloud from the book of Jasher, and it is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it. And so you are more than welcome to tag along as we begin the exploration of the first book of Apologetics, the book of Jasher. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there are several playlists that will be linked into the box down below so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. Of particular import today is going to be a house built upon shifting sands, which is the culmination of my Bible study, a biblical deconstruction of the Bible, uh, and the unconventional Bible study, which is the actual study which the book was a derivative from. Um, if you find value in this, I ask that you do all of the wonderful things down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated, put it in the box. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. You do not have to agree with me. Just realize that we are all human and should be treated as such. Uh, in addition to that, if you truly find value, I ask that you hit the super thanks or the super chat, join for a membership, or pick up a copy of one of my books. The first one, A Series of Unconventional Beliefs, is my story on how I came to find what I consider to be the path, the one that I am on, and the one that I am shining the light upon. It's details how I took control of the electromagnetic forces of creation through the will of God and healed myself in three ways. There has since been a fourth way. The second one is my work on alchemy. It is the completion, in my estimation, of the Mysterium Conjunctionis by Carl Jung and his work on the archetypes. And the third one is The House Built Upon Shifting Sand. There is a playlist where I read all of these books aloud. You are more than welcome to purchase if you would like to support the channel or watch it for free so that you get a better understanding of all of the things that I discuss as we talk about the various points that are brought to light by the text. Um, now that that's out of the way, let us go ahead and dive into the book of Jasher. This is the book of the generations of man whom God created upon the earth on the day when the Lord God made heaven and earth. Jasher chapter 1. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And God created man in his own image. And God formed man from the ground. And he blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul endowed with speech. And the Lord said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make unto him a helpmeet. And the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took away one of his ribs, and built flesh upon it, and formed it, and brought it to Adam. And Adam awoke from his sleep, and behold, a woman was standing before him. And he said, this is a bone of my bones, and it shall be called woman, for this has been taken from man. And Adam called her name Eve, and she was the mother of all living. And God blessed them and called their names Adam and Eve in the day that he created them. And the Lord God said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. All right, so we've got a lot to digest right here already. First off, there is already a direct contradiction to the narrative itself within the narrative, right? Adam called her name Eve, and then God blesses them and calls their name Adam and Eve. So we have two instances of the exact same event happening, one by a man and one by God. That is interesting. Uh, we're going to pull this up real quick. Let me Google this and I'll pull it up. Is there a difference in a man's rib cage and a woman's? Now, I'm doing this so that it is not relying upon my understanding alone, but rather the common knowledge of humanity, right? How many ribs do human have? Males and females have the same number of ribs. Well, that is a vitally important understanding. Um, if you are going to be uh, asserting that this is literal, that you must take this as the literal interpretation, that this is exactly how history goes, right? There was no missing rib from a man, right? That is one of the many lies that the church has brought about and put upon us that for some reason persists. I have an instance here in my own life recently where that was a thing that wasn't known by somebody. Yes, we all have the same number of ribs, barring some a birth defect or an accident. We are built the same in that way. Now there is difference in the size of the bones. There is difference in the structure of the bones. There is like the strength and the way that it breaks even is different between men and women. Those are differences. That is a genetic difference between a man and a woman. That is a literal thing. They can tell whether or not you were male and female in 1,000 years just from your skeletal remains. That is a thing that is true. Um, and so it is important to remember that not everything that is in the narrative is exactly true. And if it is not exactly true, then it cannot be taken as a literal thing. Secondarily, this is answering a lot of questions, right? This is a lot of the questions that I ask in my book, The House Built Upon Shifting Sands. Now, not this in particular. This is skipping ahead from some of my questions. And I really didn't ask a whole lot of questions about this other than the obvious why was man placed ahead of women in this particular thing? Obviously, it has to do with the surroundings and that, right? In other places, it was the female that was more venerated than the male. In this particular area, it was the male. There are reasons for that. We explore those in the Bible study, we explore those in the book. Uh, but this part right here, not really. Right now, God said, "Let us make man in our image." That implies that there is more than one God. Right? This is the Elohim, the gods who walk among. That is not the divine. Before the beginning, God was infinite and without form, the void even, and God decided to create and limited Himself from the infinite into the finite. That is creation. In doing so, he created all the elements at the exact same time. And in the beginning, those elements are created and held in stasis. All of the elements held in stasis. No collisions, no heat exchange, no transfer, no motion. And then God said, "Let there be light." What he actually said, I am the light. And he became the light, and the light was good. And he became the creation, limiting himself from the infinite into the finite for whatever length of time he decides, right? God exists outside of the creation, not ever inside of the creation at any point fully. That setting in motion at the beginning from all things created, but not yet moving, into the motion was the beginning, or it was the logos, the beginning set into motion, the breath of life, the creative utterance. That was the concept that is relayed in Genesis. Not a literal, on this day this was created, on this day this was created, but a general. In the beginning, before there was nothing, and then God decided to create, and there became the creation. He became the light, he became the division of the waters, he became male and female, he became all of the animals and all of the plants. Everything in existence is an expression of God by the direct will of God. All of it. Everything is an equal representative. I'm a representative. You are a representative. These glasses are a representative. And if we are placing our attributes upon God, then we are anthropomorphizing something that we cannot understand. Now, we do that. There are very valid reasons to do that. It helps keep people in line that can't think. That's one reason, and it's not even a bad one. But there are we are existent inside of the creation, and therefore nothing inside of the creation can be the fullness of the creation at the same time. And so there was never a man who was ever the logos in its full representative. We are each an equal representative of the creation in motion at the will of God. That is the Logos. And so the Logos is all things. It is the breath of life, quite literally. Uh, there are four parts, right? We'll do the alchemy bit right here at the beginning, too, right? There is the creative spirit and there is the stagnant spirit, but they are both the spirit. There is the deciding factor, which is you, and then there is the temple or the created thing, which is the body. Now, the body represents earth, the soul is the representative of air, it fills the vessel. And then you have water and fire, which is the other two elements, and water is the element of stagnation, fire is the element of change. All of these things are playing together, right? But you are a individualized piece of God put into a vessel so that you can experience the creation. We have a lot of things to learn while we are in the creation, and some of them are pleasant, some of them are not. All of them are ours to learn until we learn the lesson. If you are receiving the lesson, you have not yet learned the lesson, despite what you may believe. We are the deciding agent placed in here, and we fight these two forces all of the time. We fight stagnation and we fight change all of the time, and we are meant to. We are meant to be the deciding agent. That is why the concept of original sin, biting the apple, is completely stupid, right? God creates a tree, puts a tree in the garden, tells you not to eat from it. Fine, okay, whatever. But you don't have the capacity to know, and we're going to get to that. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. You are the deciding agent. There are the two forces that are right, stagnation and change, and then there is the temple in which those forces are manifested. When you are stagnant for a long period of time, you put on a little bit of weight. You get out of breath when you exercise. When you are too active, you don't have any excess to burn in the case of an emergency. Uh, there are detriments to being a little bit too healthy, right? We're not here to debate those things. You can overexceed into either one of them, and life is about finding the balance between the forces of stagnation and change. That can be manifested in a wide variety of ways. I have described the way that I do that in my first two books, the series of Unconventional Beliefs and the Greenstone, both describe the process by which I do that. So I'm not going to do that here today. You are more than welcome to check out the playlist, see it explained along the way in better detail than I could do. All of that is that this is all an expression of how to explain something. You just heard my rationalization of how the creation happened, who God is, why we are here, and what we are meant to do while we are here. All in just a couple of minutes, I was able to encapsulate my thoughts on that. Now, I could extrapolate farther, I have in several videos, but that's the exact same thing that we're dealing with right here in Jasher. This is an attempt to explain Genesis, which was literally the exact same thing I just did. It is an encapsulation of an idea. All of the creation story in Genesis, nobody was there. The best possible attribution for that is that Moses wrote it several thousand years after it happened from the collection of the verbal histories of his people. That is the best possible attribution, but there's really no reason to believe that Moses was ever existent. There's really not. I looked into it. I couldn't find anything. If you do, let me know. I will look into it. But there's not really anything there. And so it is more than likely just that. It is an amalgamation, a compilation of the various oral histories of the area surrounding. This is even a provable thing because you can go and find older versions of all of these stories. The only way that the Bible is the oldest is if you take that particular thing on faith because there is no record of it. There are no scrolls, there are no parchment fragments that contain these stories as they are written from the time in which they were said to have been done. All of them are significantly later, most of them post exilic. And so there are consistency problems with believing all of this with zero hesitation. but they are an amalgamation of the stories of the places where they were. And so there is value to be found in them, even if they are not the literal truth. This is how people thought that the world was created at this point in time. Now, what this point in time is highly up for debate. The book of Jasher is almost certainly not contemporaneous with Moses, right? Moses didn't exist. Most of the books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, were probably created post exile. This would have to be dated later than that because this takes that and expands upon it in ways that will be obvious. Not taking the time to explain the parts that people don't have problems with, but taking the time to explain the parts that they do. And instead of that being the canon, instead of the better explanations being absorbed into the book of Genesis, as it almost certainly would have been, instead we have this separate book with no historical reference at all. We have a translation of scrolls and none of the scrolls from which it was translated. That's a problem, especially considering that the date that it was translated was in the 1600s. And that was right in the middle of, hey, let's make everything comport exactly with what we want, exactly how we want, and we'll kill anybody that disagrees. Okay, we can get back to the text now. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Right. Um, well, actually, we're not quite done here yet because God formed man from the ground, blew breath into his nostrils, and said, it is not good for man to be alone. Now, this is a little bit different than the way that it is expressed in the other books, right? No, there's two different creation stories in Genesis, and they disagree with each other on this particular part of the story, right? In one, it is God made them man and woman at the same time, and the other one, it is separated, but there is a request, right? Adam is given stewardship of the garden, and he is doing all of the things, but he is looking upon the animals with envy. Now, I wonder what possibly he could have been looking upon the animals with envy about. And it made him have emotions that God recognized and then said, it is not good for man to be alone. Now, that is an important part of the understanding because what was Eve the helpmeet for? Was it tending the garden? Well, he was doing that prior to her creation. What exactly was it? We know what it was. It was sexual intercourse. That's what he needed help meeting, right? There's a possibility that he was getting a little bit too happy about watching some things, and God was like, whoa, right? That's assuming that God was walking. This is probably not God. The story's not literal. But that is an important understanding to the whole thing, considering the fact that they're like, sex is a sin. Well, sex is not a sin. They were not cast out of the garden for having sex. And it is obvious, if you take the text as literal, whichever one you choose, that they were having sex in the garden. Right? That was the reason that she was created as his helpmeet. He wasn't having political discourse. They were not having philosophical connections. They were not, hurting animals. They were just kind of wandering through, picking up some sticks and weeding, maybe. Not even really that. Just kind of wandering around and picking food and eating it. Right? They weren't killing any animals. They didn't need any help preserving food. Right? There was only one real need that he had, that he needed somebody else to help him with. And so it is almost certain that they were having sex in the garden. And I am hammering that particular nail home is because some people believe that she was a virgin until the children were born and that they were twins. That's a wild assumption. Now, I am not attributing that to any one particular person. Just so we're clear, there is a concurrent study. This is not that. But there are people who believe that, and that is foolish, right? Just like there is no prophecy of a virgin birth later, this would be necessary in order for it to be presaging it. Since that is not a thing, there was no prophecy of the virgin birth. That doesn't exist. I got a chapter on that. Then this part doesn't have to be that way either. There is the original sin was to eat from the apple. The apple was the ability to understand what sin was. So you can commit a sin if you don't have the capacity by the creator to understand what a sin is. You cannot sin. So original sin falls flat on its face on a multitude of levels. Now we can get back to the text. All right. We're here. All right. Verse 7. And the Lord God took Adam and his wife, and he placed them in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And he commanded them and said unto them, from every tree of the garden you may eat, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Now, in the original, right? Genesis is the original. This is not clear, right? It is not Adam and his wife that God gives the instruction to. It is instead just Adam. And Adam doesn't have the real knowledge of, hey, this is good, this is bad. They're not having these philosophical discussions, right? They don't have the knowledge of good and evil. That's not a thing for them yet. And so they can't be wrong by disobeying something that they can't know they were wrong to disobey. This whole thing falls apart on a multitude of levels. But this, as evidence of apologetics, which is my assertion here, right? This answers one of the questions because one of the questions is, well, and it wasn't like definitive, this is the drawing line, but it is a correlative, right? God gives the command to Adam. Well, what's the expectation that Adam would pass that on to Eve? And if he did, was it accurate? Well, a little bit later, we do get Eve telling the snake, well, we're not supposed to eat or even touch the tree. Well, that is adding something to the will of God, right? God said, do not eat. He didn't say, don't touch. You're to dress the trees. You're tending the garden because this perfect garden that God created needs you to eat it. It needs you to dress and tend it. You've got to be there to do that, or it's just going to go to pieces. Like God didn't take that into account, obviously. Obviously, you have to be there to pick the weeds from around the trees. But either Adam did not relay the information correctly, right? He told her, don't touch it, which is understandable given the circumstances, or that part is different, right? It is added to, it's hyperbole. Again, these are amalgamations of ideas from diverse peoples, really diverse peoples. And so this, uh, this tree of knowledge of good and evil, that is us learning to discern. It is us as a species, writ large, on the whole, being able to tell, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill people. That might be a bad thing. Right? Maybe it would be better if we would cooperate because that was not necessarily the way that we began. Now, beginning is a long and heated debate. I am not a short time person, right? I believe that the earth is older than 8,000 years. That's not in agreement with a lot of people. That's fine. You don't have to believe what I believe. But I do believe that we have been here a long time, that there have been several cycles of advancement and regression because ebb and flow is the cycle of nature. And there is evidence to support these things. But at some point, somebody was philosophizing. What happened at this point when we were able to make this discernment? And that is what is recorded in Genesis and in Jasher. 8. And when God had blessed and commanded them, he went from them, and Adam and his wife dwelt in the garden according to the command which the Lord had commanded them. That is a lot of commands, right? It says, and when God had blessed and commanded them, he commanded and said unto them, from every tree in the garden you may eat, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in that day you shall die. You shall surely die. That is written in all these books. Doesn't happen. That is not what happens, but okay. Huh. But that's a lot of commanding, right? Make sure that you pay attention to my commands. This is my command. This is one verse. We have commanded them, command, and commanded. Three commands in here, right? And it is just a reiteration of the command before. It's not giving you a new command, it's not expanding upon the command. It's just descriptive. It's telling you follow the command of the command that commands. And the serpent, which God had created with him in the earth, came to them to incite them to transgress the command of God, which he had commanded them. There we go again. That's a lot of commands, right? You better listen. But again, they do not have the ability to discern at this point the difference between good and evil. They do not have that knowledge. They don't know that disobeying is bad. And why did God put the snake in the tree, the serpent? Why did God put the serpent in the tree, the accuser, the tempter? Why was he even created? If you wanted man and woman, Adam and Eve, to tend the garden for all of eternity, why would you even put the tempter there? Why would that even be there? This is a rationalization, the anthropomorphication of forces, right? Well, obviously, if I make bad decisions, then I was tempted by someone. Something was telling me to do so. Now, I am in agreement with that in a small measure. Remember those forces we were talking about, the stay the same and the change? I believe that you hear an iteration of that in your head. Now, this is not, it can be, but it's not, generally speaking, this is the voice of God telling you to go kill people, right? That's not what I'm talking about. What it is you walk into a situation and you hear, you should do this, right? And you know, yeah, you should do that. Or you hear, you should do this. And you know, no, I shouldn't do that, but I'm really tempted to. You hear those voices. It is a constant fight. There is a reason why they have all of the animations of the angel and the demon on your shoulder. You hear these voices. They are stagnation and change. One is leading you into, hey, let's try something new. And the other one is saying, let's not, right? Now, whether that is good or bad is entirely dependent on the situation. Sometimes it is good to be stagnant. Sometimes it is good to have change. It is entirely dependent upon where you personally are in your personal journey. But if the all seeing, all knowing, all present God of creation, who created all things and knows all things, wanted Adam and Eve to tend the garden forever, then how is that not what happened? Right? Well, he gave them free will. You're right. And how did he give them free will? By planting the fucking tree. Yeah, I know. Somebody's mad. I don't care. Does it seem like I care? I don't. I mean, I love you. I want the best for you. But if you are buying this lock, stock, and barrel, you got problems. And I'm trying to help with that. And so, why did God create this tree? So that they would have the ability to discern good and evil and therefore be able to go out, be fruitful, and multiply across the face of the earth. Were they just going to multiply in the garden? Is that what we're doing? Okay, so this is an explanation. Well, obviously, we're tempted into doing it by some outside voice, not the voice of my connection with the Creator, as both the temptation and the power to overcome the temptation. Not that. No, no, it has to be something that is co equal to God, some outside entity created by God as an equal to God. No, he's not equal. He just thinks he's equal, but he can act with the total authority as though he is equal. No, Satan's not real. You are making the decisions. That's a bad one, right? That steps on toes, right? You are making the bad decisions in your life. Every single time you pick up a cigarette, you are choosing to be a smoker. Every time you pick up a drink of alcohol, you are choosing to drink alcohol. It's not a disease that is causing you to pick up and pour. It's not. It is your choice. And now it can be a very hard choice. I will grant that. I have been an addict, but it is a choice. You are choosing to do the thing. And there's nothing wrong with moderate consumption of things, alcohol, marijuana, even to a lesser degree, some of the other narcotics to a much lesser degree. Because those, like, if you have to transform it too far from its original state, it's probably not good for you. Regardless, right? We are here for the experience and to discern good and evil. Otherwise, there's no reason to be here. God can create a perfect garden that doesn't need to be curated. He didn't need to put us in it. He didn't need to put a tree in there that would be give us the capacity to know the difference between good and evil. He didn't have to put a tempter in the garden with the tree to tempt us to eat from the tree so we could learn to do these things. It's a rationalization and it's not a bad explanation, right? It's understandable why people would believe this back when we didn't have the capacity to look at various sources and to get better understandings of things. But this is it's time for an evolution on this, right? We know that these were stories and we know that they were collected. Like the best possible thing is that Moses did that, but Moses wasn't there. There's no real reason to believe he was. And if he wasn't there, then he couldn't have collected it. That is a series of problems. It is much better to look at this as an allegory, right? This is how we believe that the world worked from this particular viewpoint. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with aligning yourself with the betterment of humanity through an understanding like these. But you have to be open minded enough to where if you get some contravening information, then maybe you can adjust it without it being a divine problem, right? When you learn that, you know what, it's okay for people to heat themselves or to cook food on this day, right? That's not really a slight to God if you're picking up a stick. We don't have to beat you in the head with a stone until you die. We don't have to do that. Maybe we can adjust this belief. And so now we don't have these blasphemy laws where people die for blaspheming God. Well, that's a good thing. We should be able to do that with our beliefs. The same as with like my major one, right? With the United States of America has exceeded the moral code of the Bible, right? Because here in the United States, we have created a new commandment. And that new commandment is thou shalt not rape. And there is a penalty for rape that is not marry the woman and pay her father, right? We have transcended God's divine justice in at least that one way. And so maybe it's okay if we can adjust our beliefs, keep some of the cores, all of the good stuff, and maybe some of the other stuff go away. Transgress the command of God, which he had commanded them. 10. And the serpent enticed and persuaded the woman to eat from the tree of knowledge, and the woman hearkened to the voice of the serpent, and she transgressed the word of God, and took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And she ate, and she took from it and gave also to her husband, and he ate. And Adam and his wife transgressed the command of God, which he commanded them, and God knew it, and his anger was kindled against them, and he cursed them. And the Lord God drove them that day from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which they were taken, and they went and dwelt at the east of the Garden of Eden. And Adam knew his wife Eve, and she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. And she called the name of the firstborn Cain, saying, I have attained a man from the Lord. And the name of the other she called Abel, for she said, in vanity we came into the earth, and in vanity we shall be taken from it. Okay, there's a lot here, right? But one of the primary things that, well, we'll get to it in a minute. I mean, we're about to do the sacrifice, and that will probably, well, no, we still got plenty of time. All right. To till the ground, she bore 2 sons and 3 daughters, right? There is nothing here about it being twins. It wasn't in the original either. That's a reference I'm trying to find. And the boys grew up, and their father gave them a possession in the land. And Cain was a tiller of the ground, and Abel a keeper of sheep. And it was at the expiration of a few years that they brought an approximating offering to the Lord. And Cain brought from the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought from the firstlings of his flock, from the fat thereof. And God turned and inclined to Abel and his offering. And a fire came down from the Lord from heaven and consumed it. And unto Cain and his offering the Lord did not turn, and he did not incline to it, for he had brought from the inferior fruit of the ground before the Lord. And Cain was jealous against his brother Abel on account of this, and sought a pretext to slay him. All right, so straight off the top, this is not a propitiatory salvation thing, right? This is a free goodwill offering, right? From the fruit of my labors, I am bringing you an offering. And God says, cool to one guy and cool, not cool to another. But we have some problems, right? And this is one of the things that I definitely talk about in the book. Uh, there is a timing issue here. Noah was the survivor, right? He survived the flood. He built the ark. He brought his sons with him and his daughters. And when the flood was over and the waters receded, he went out and he built an altar and he offered a sacrifice. Again, not a salvation sacrifice, a thank you, a blessing, right? A blessing to the Lord for the blessings I have received. This is what I have received. Here's your peace pack. And he did this, and the angel comes down, and I'm not sure if the terminology is that it is an angel or that it is God, but regardless, he says, you've done good, right? See the land, go out, be fruitful, and multiply, subdue the earth, and be stewards thereof, shed no blood of man. Oh, and by the way, you can eat meat now. And that is a major context problem. That is a chronological issue of the nth degree. Because if it was not until after the flood that they were able to eat meat, then what was the whole reason that we had a herdsman? Why did he have herds? Were they eating milk? Well, they weren't given permission for that either. They were given a vegetarian diet at the expulsion from Eden. You can go and eat from any of the seed bearing plants and herbs on the face of the earth. That is what it was said. Say, go out and till the earth, and that you would have a hard time getting the fruit of your labors, but that's what you were given to eat. It was a vegetarian diet at this point in time. So, why did Abel have a flock? Why did he kill a flock? Right? Why did he kill part of his flock? Why? Well, did God directly tell him to do that? Well, I don't believe that that's a possibility, except through those voices. Right? That is divine inspiration, both for the positive and the negative. So why? I mean, why did he have a herd? He was not able to eat the things that he killed. That seems like a waste. That seems like a great waste. You can say it was for clothing, but they can give them fig leaves. That worked. Right? When they left the garden, they were given skins. Okay, God gave them a skin. They didn't kill it. Why was the first shedding of blood in the new world? Why was that okay? Why was that the accepted thing? Well, because you need blood to be later. Later, when the temple comes around, you need blood to be the currency because it is. Right? Blood is the currency. And it is the energetic distribution that is happening from animal sacrifice. Now, there was never any point in time in which killing a turtle dove or any type of dove, a chicken, a cow, a goat, killing any animal whatsoever, ever forgave you from sin, right? Forgave you for the things you did wrong. I killed this man. I'm going to go kill a cow and now everything's fine. No, that was never a thing. And, and because that was never a thing, the blood sacrifice was a pocketbook hit, right? It was a way to penalize you for doing the wrong thing. It's like a traffic ticket. How do they make you wear a seatbelt? They hit you for $250 every time they catch you not wearing a seatbelt. And rather than pay the $250, you put on the seatbelt. That is exactly what animal sacrifice was. You have made this transgression. Well, pay for it with something that you need. You are going to eat this animal or sell this animal for something that you needed. That was the whole purpose of having animals. Well, that's the whole purpose we would keep animals. Maybe that ain't the whole purpose they had the animal, depending on their helpmeet. But there is no reason why Abel should have had a herd or to make a sacrifice of that herd. Even to kill the animal which is edible, without the ability to eat it and just to harvest its skin, that's not really enough, right? It's really not enough on a morality level, like big scope, laws of creation morality level. That's not a good idea, right? That can lead to some serious repercussions, Custer. What I'm saying is there was a chronological problem here, and it is not that they are addressing, right? They are addressing the parts of the story that were missing from the original. They are further expanding upon the foundation which was laid, but the foundation was broken already. And so, and in some time after, Cain and Abel, his brother, went one day into the field to do their work, and they were both in the field. Cain tilling and plowing in his ground, and Abel feeding his flock. And the flock passed that part which Cain had plowed in the ground, and it sorely grieved Cain on this account. I would guess so. Have you ever tilled the ground? Have you ever walked behind a plow? Like, I'm not talking about riding a tractor, but behind a donkey or a horse. That's a job, boss. That is a job. I've done it only once. Thank you, Lord. And Cain approached his brother Abel in anger and said unto him, what is there between me and thee, that thou comest to dwell and bring thy flock to feed in my land? And Abel answered his brother Cain and said unto him, what is there between me and thee, that thou shalt eat the flesh of my flock and clothe thyself with their wool? And now therefore put off the wool of my sheep, which thou hast clothed thyself, and recompense me for their fruit and flesh, which thou hast eaten. And when thou shalt hast done this, I will then go from thy lands as thou hast said. He didn't say get it completely out of my lands. What he said was, why are you walking across the ground I'm working on? That's a very valid response. And Cain said to his brother Abel, surely if I slay thee this day, who will require thy blood from me? And Abel answered Cain, saying, surely God, who has made us in the earth, he will avenge my cause, and he will require my blood from thee, shouldst thou slay me. For the Lord is the judge and arbiter, and it is he who will requite man according to his evil, and the wicked man according to the wickedness that he may do upon the earth. And now, if thou shouldst slay me here, surely God knoweth thy secret views, and will judge thee for the evil which thou didst declare to do unto me this day. And when Cain heard the words which Abel his brother had spoken, behold, the anger of Cain was kindled against his brother, and his brother Abel for declaring this thing. And Cain hastened and rose up and took the iron part of his plowing instrument, with which he suddenly smote his brother, and he slew him. And Cain spilt the blood of his brother Abel upon the earth, and the blood of Abel streamed upon the earth before the flock. And after this, Cain repented having slain his brother, and he was sadly grieved, and he wept over him, and it vexed him exceedingly. And Cain rose up and dug a hole in the field wherein he put his brother's body, and he turned the dust over it. Okay, first off, this is a big problem. This is a very, 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 very big problem on a couple of levels, right? It's not just the one level. On the archaeological level, this is not a thing, right? The iron part of his plowing instrument was definitely not around the time of Cain, right? Yeah, at this point in time, because that's the other part of the problem. This was Stone Age. This was Bronze Age, possibly, right? Because bronze would fit better with the Mosaic interpretation. For it to be iron, it would have to be significantly later than Mosaic. Well, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? But on top of that, um, the plow wasn't invented yet, right? At this point in time, that wasn't there. And when did we get that? When did we get the plow and fire and all of that according to the biblical narrative? After this, right? It is after this that the Anunnaki come down and they teach the sons of God, or the sons of God come down to talk to walk among the sons of men, or whatever it is, right? And they teach them all of the things of the earth, right? Well, that is definitely after this part of the narrative, right? So at this point in the actual chronology, there is no plow. There really isn't fire. There's no roots. There's no jewelry. There's no musical instruments. There's no housing, right? It is after this that it happens. And that really doesn't even depend upon the Anunnaki, which is one narrative for it, right? The sons of God or the angels was the Anunnaki, the Greys, however you want to interpret that. But other than that, it is the sons of Cain who bring that knowledge to men. So on all three different interpretations of it, it fails. This is entirely inconsistent and is therefore disqualifying as a source material. Again, twice, and we're just on 25. Okay, now this absolutely differs from the original, right? From Genesis, right? We don't have a repenting of slaying his brother, and he was sadly grieved and wept over him and vexed him, right? None of that has existed in the original. And rising up and digging a hole in the field where he put his brother's body and turning the dust over it, that's not there either. And now we are returning to the text, verse 28. And the Lord knew what Cain had done to his brother, and the Lord appeared to Cain and said unto him, where is Abel thy brother that was with thee? And Cain dissembled and said, I do not know. I am not my brother's keeper. And the Lord said unto him, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground where thou hast slain him. For thou hast slain thy brother, and hast dissembled before me, and didst imagine in my heart that I saw thee not, nor knew all thy actions. But thou didst this thing, and didst slay thy brother for naught, and because he spoke rightly to thee. And now therefore cursed be thou from the ground which opened its mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand, and wherein thou didst bury him. And it shall be when thou shalt till it, it shall no more give thee its strength as in the beginning. For thorns and thistles shall the ground produce, and thou shalt be moving and wandering in the earth until until the day of thy death. All right. And at that time Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, from the place where he was, and he went moving and wandering in the land towards the east of Eden, which was already, they were already east of Eden, so this is farther east than Eden, and he and all belonging to it. All right, so obviously we have more here than we had before, because before God was flummoxed. God had no idea in Genesis what happened to Cain or what happened to Abel, right? He came and he's like, where's your brother at? And he's like, I don't know. He says, wait, it smells like blood. Your blood, the blood's crying out. What did you do? Right? He didn't know. He didn't know and then show up. That's not what happened. That's not how the narrative went at all. It's just like in the garden, and he goes and he in them days he walked with men, right? And he's looking for Adam and Eve, and he's like, where are you? He's God. How does he not know where they are? Well, what's going on right there? How is God confused? Now, we have many instances of God being confused. See the Exodus. And at that time, Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, from the place where he was, and he went moving and wandering in the land towards the east of Eden, he and all belonging to him. And Cain knew his wife in those days, and she conceived and bare a son. And he called his name Enoch, saying, in that time the Lord began to give him rest and quiet in the earth. Oh, really? So, okay, so here, wandering no not, cursed be thou from the ground, which opened his mouth to receive thy blood. So this isn't saying that you were cursed to wander the ground like it is in Genesis. Right? This is a whole different curse. Right? This is the curse that was placed upon him in the garden. Right? And from now on, the ground will be difficult for you to receive the harvest from, right? You will have to toil to receive it. That was the curse in the garden. Now it is being cast down one generation outside of the garden. And so, okay. All right. And when you till it, they will give you your strength and all of that. Right? And then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord from the place where he went, moving and wandering in the land towards the east of Eden, he and all belonging to him. So that's not you are cursed to wander it. It is just he had to leave the area. He was going over there. We've seen that before. And Cain knew his wife in those days, and she conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Enoch, saying, in that time, the Lord began to give him rest and quiet in the earth. That is an interesting phrase. And now this the Enoch that we're going to be talking about later, possibly building pyramids? Is that this Enoch? Or is this the justification for the separation of Enoch from, what is it, Deuteronomy or Numbers, where we have the two lines and they both have the same people? And which one is it? Is this isn't the important Enoch. This is the other Enoch, right? Because the important Enoch did not come from Cain. I think he came from Seth. The important Enoch couldn't be coming from Cain, right? The most holy, famous man on the ever walked the earth, right? And at that time, Cain also began to build a city, and he built a city, and he called the name of the city Enoch, according to the name of his son. For in those days the Lord had given him rest upon the earth, and he did not move about and wander as in the beginning. And Irad was born to Enoch, and Irad begat Mechuel, and Mechuel begat Methusiel. This is absolutely sounding like it's about to start doing some stuff. But we are at about an hour, and that's going to make a good wrap up for the day. And so that's going to bring us to the end of our exploration of Jasher chapter 1. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of enlightenment, and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I do have some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. It is time to move past some of the past assumptions. We can keep the good parts, right? We can keep do not kill, honor thy mother and thy father, the Lord thy God, right? We can keep that. Well, we can get rid of beating people in the head with sticks and stones, right? We can get rid of that part. We can get rid of the part where God's a racist, right? We can get rid of that part. We can get rid of the part where it's okay to rape somebody as long as you pay their mom or pay their daddy, pay the daddy, and marry. Then it's okay. You can commit the assault, and it's especially okay if nobody witnesses it. If she's out there by herself, she was really asking for it. Well, I think we can get rid of that. I think it would be okay if we just no longer observe those things. I think it would be great. As a matter of fact, we already do that. The problem is that we are holding on to these remnants of speculation as though they are actual truth. And they're great for speculation. They're great for formulating ideas. They're great for getting the concepts and having discussions about it. But it's not really great to base your reality upon. It's not great to say there was nobody 8,000 years ago. That is a significant problem with an understanding, right? You are operating from the wrong understanding. If you believe that there was nothing before, now creation could be Adam and Eve could be 250,000 years ago, and then we're talking about something. Then we're talking about a possibility, and there are a lot of things we can talk about there, right? And it doesn't have to be 250,000, right? Those numbers are a little bit adjustable. They're not very adjustable, right? You can knock 200,000 years off of it, but it might be 245. It might be 255. It might be 260. Right? It is entirely possible that we're a little bit off on our dating, but we're not that far off. And there are reasons to believe that there have been significant events that have changed our understandings over time. There are records, right? The the recording of Plato, recording Socrates, recording Solon, who recorded the priest, that there was a series of cataclysms. That is at least worth investigating with an open mind, right? What if it's accurate? What if they actually did have at least four cycles predating the cycle of Atlantis? What if that is real? Well, maybe there is some more to be considered there. Maybe the chronology on the temple, which is the pyramid, can be pushed back a little bit farther than 6,000 years. Maybe we can extend that prior to the 12,000 years, 600 of that particular event. And maybe that would explain the weathering that can be found on the Sphinx complex. Maybe that can explain some of the other things that we can find in the area. Maybe that's why. And that's entirely possible, but that is speculation. That is my speculation. And I maintain it as such because I can't go back in time and see. I'm not doing the on the ground research. The best I can do is read the on the ground research. This book is not based on the ground research. This is somebody read Genesis and was like, oh, there are some glaringly obvious problems with this narrative, but I bet I can fix them. And that's what they did. This is an apology for the Bible, for the Old Testament at least. And I'm not sure, like it said in the introduction, that there were some anachronisms, right? That should be a fucking flag. You should be like, hey, maybe there's a problem here, right? If there are anachronisms included, then it's not an entirely verifiable source, and so there's going to be problems relying upon it as one. We're going to burn through this book. I'm going to get through this in the exact same manner that we did here today. I will be back tomorrow. How long we'll be here, I don't know. I'm trying to get the timing worked out. I'm trying to get all the things where it'll be a flow, right? We're developing a system for success. Developing systems for success takes a little bit of playing around, a little bit of stagnation, a little bit of change, all mixed up, finding the balance and getting it right. So, if you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that is stated, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really find value, hit me with the super thanks or the super chat. Uh, Join for a membership or pick up a copy of any of my books. There's also some links provided down below so you can reach out to me directly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace. Thank you, Lord.